No, 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 no. That's not what they look like. Obviously. Despite what the AI-generated animal videos will have you believe, the dragon snake is actually a very real and pretty normal-looking guy. I mean, I say they're normal. They do look pretty strange, but we'll get to that. So, the dragon snake, also known as the Javan tubercle snake, or tubercle snake, the Javan mud snake, the rough-backed litter snake, and their scientific name, which is, of course, Xenodermis javanicus. Now, sharp-eared viewers might have heard me say Javan in there. Truthfully, when I was first looking into Javan mud snakes, or dragon snakes, I wasn't entirely sure what it meant to be Javan, which is a little embarrassing, because, I mean, Indonesia is home to like a large percentage of the world's biodiversity, and so I should know this. I was, however, familiar with the term Javanese, which of course refers to somebody, or rather refers to the main language of the Indonesian island of Java. But Javan denotes anything that is native to Java, or the Javan Oceans, or anything that has to do with that island. The island of Java itself is an Indonesian island territory. It actually contains 50% of Indonesia's entire population, which is pretty cool. And of course, since it contains such a large concentration of Indonesia's population, it's also going to be very heavily dominated by agriculture. In fact, 2/3 of Java's entire land is specifically agriculture, specifically rice agriculture. A lot of rice farms, wet rice farms, rice paddies and things like that, which as far as the dragon snake is concerned, not that bad. In terms of agriculture in an island, in animal territory, rice paddies are probably the least disruptive for a species like the dragon snake that is mostly fossorial and spends a lot of its time around already muddy territories. Because their dragon snakes are fossorial, they spend a majority of their time underground, of course, that is what that means, except when they're looking for food, which their main sources of food would be toads and smaller snakes and worms and other wet things like that. As far as business as usual goes, the dragon snake is pretty well off when it comes to navigating around rice paddies. However, although the dragon snake is okay with it, since the dragon snake is fossorial, the frogs and toads that they feed on, not so much. Specifically, the frogs and toads are very vulnerable to pesticides, which are very prevalent in a lot of the rice paddies that you'll find in Indonesia. As you probably know, frogs and toads are amphibians, and because they're amphibians, they breathe through their skin. And that makes them very, very sensitive to any pesticides, for instance, that their skin would come into contact with, or just chemicals in general. And so although the pesticides wouldn't necessarily directly hurt the dragon snake, they can hurt the frogs and toads. Because they can hurt the frogs and toads, if a Java snake feeds on a frog or a toad that came into contact with pesticides at some point during its life, the pesticides could disrupt the digestion process of the dragon snake and then go on to later kill the dragon snake. So that's kind of one of the downsides of living in a major agricultural plot of land. Basically, pesticides as a whole could potentially serve as problems for the dragon snake long term. However, it is good to note that the IUCN Red List considers dragon snakes to be least concern. So despite the pesticides being a bit of a problem, they seem not to be too bad of a problem. But it is important to note that the IUCN Red List says that pesticides affect a small minority of the species. So I guess it's not actually a huge concern, which is interesting. But thank you, IUCN Red List, for letting me know. Ooh, wait, you'll want to know this. Okay, so this is kind of unrelated a little bit, but it still relates to pesticides in crops, specifically rice crops, specifically rice paddies. Okay, so in 2022, there was a study done in Hangzhou, China, where a bunch of rice farmers, instead of pesticides, replaced it with having a active carp population, like native species of carp in their rice paddies, navigating in between the crops. Well, in some variations, they also had mitten crabs and soft-shelled turtles. The animals that they did have in the study would like expedite the process of the decomposition of excess plant matter from the rice crops, which would just make them grow much quicker. It increased the crop yield by 12%, which is like really cool because that's an extra benefit of having that, as well as the fact that the mitten crabs and soft-shelled turtles and the carps and all the different species that they used to replace pesticides, like, would actively feed off of any insects that were getting onto the crops. So you're getting two birds with one stone there. So it's just overall a better choice to have like an active ecosystem, or to build the rice paddies into the ecosystem instead of doing pesticides. Maybe it'll spread to Indonesia. It seems that this method is spreading throughout Hangzhou, China, in terms of the rice farmers. So potentially this could also spread to Indonesia and maybe be pretty good for the local species. Yeah, I mean, I know the dragon snakes would definitely prefer that over pesticides, and not just because the cleaner water would make it better place for the frogs to lay their eggs, and there would be more tadpoles, and dragon snakes also eat tadpoles. Would be sick. But that's not even counting the fish. If there were fish in there, the dragon snake would probably also feed off of that, but that's besides the point. Actually, speaking on feeding on fish, dragon snakes are known to feed on various species of freshwater fish, such as rasboras and spotted betas. Any fish that can be found inland in any like rivers or ponds that are small enough to fit in the snake's mouth, that's what they'll go for. The same goes for frogs, and honestly, amphibians as a whole in Java. Wait, Java has a species of Sicilian native there? Marsh Sicilian? No way, bro. Okay, whatever. Maybe they eat Sicilians too. I don't know. But we do know that they eat little frog species also native to Java, such as the dwarf sticky frog and the Hasselt's toad. Here's something odd. What kind of snake does a dragon snake look like to you? Like, specifically, what family? As you probably know, there are pythons, boas, vipers, and colubrids. Those are all the families that snakes can be classified as. Except, that's not true. There are actually 30 families of snakes. There's pythons, boas, vipers, and colubrids. They're only the tip of the iceberg. There's Acrochididae, which houses all the quote-unquote wart snakes. There's Anamochilidae, which houses the dwarf pipe snakes, which I've never heard of. Atractospididae, also known as burrowing asps. What's an asp? I don't know what an asp is. I mean, I could go on for a while. I'll be real. I've never heard of an asp in my entire life. I'll bet you didn't think that there were that many species of snakes in the world. I mean, I know I didn't. I mean, I knew that there were a lot of species of snakes, but I didn't know there were that many families of it. Turns out there's 3,600 species of snakes, and counting. Cool. But to answer your question, dragon snakes are part of their own special family that just contains them. The family in question is called Xenodermidae, which houses them. It's just them. Nobody else. They're apparently so freaky that they don't get a seat at the table with anyone else. On that note, here's a little oddity that you chromosome fans will definitely enjoy. So, snakes usually have 36 chromosomes, but dragon snakes only have 32. Not only that, but you know how humans have, chromosome X and chromosome Y? Well, animals with cloacas, as well as various invertebrate species, have the chromosome Z and chromosome W. For snakes, it's typically ZW and ZZ, for females and males respectively. Now, we all know how unpredictably sex chromosomes can behave in various different species. But when it comes to the dragon snake, their W chromosome is developed with a structure not often found in snakes called heterochromatin. What does this mean for how they develop? Does this mean they have a third sex? No. Heterochromatin is a tightly packed form of DNA that is often less active in terms of gene expression. What does that mean? Well, basically, the only place this affects is in how mutations are found, in terms of what percentage of the babies, if both parents contain one mutation, what percentage of the babies develop that mutation when they're born. Like, for instance, if they have something like albinism, it'll take many more generations to produce a dragon snake that actually visually maintains the traits of albinism. Yes, so heterochromatin basically just leads to less variety in gene expression. Does that make sense? I'll admit I'm really hazy when it comes to like genetic biology or chromosomes or any sort of anything like that. But nevertheless, very interesting stuff. And thank you to the dragon snake for having interesting chromosomes today. Either way, the fact that heterochromatin is present in the W chromosome of dragon snakes suggests that this is what the sex chromosomes of a common ancestor looked like before dragon snakes diverged so much from other snake families. Specifically around 40 to 75 million years ago. In terms of which common ancestor they split from, we're not sure. We don't really know, but one could say with reasonable certainty that whatever the common ancestor was, it was definitely, possibly, a colubrid, given with how many similarities dragon snakes share with the Colubridae family, with the present-day Colubridae family, that is. The biggest similarity would be the way their ventral scales are so defined and thick is something that they also share with colubrids as a whole. But here's another thing. Colubrids, as well as many other types of snakes, are known for their ability to musk. Dragon snakes can do the same thing, but one thing dragon snakes have over colubrids is the fact that dragon snakes can freeze up, which is actually, in terms of a defense mechanism, kind of similar to hognoses, but because you know how Western hognoses specifically will play dead when threatened? Well, dragon snakes will freeze their body to give the impression of something that is dead. So, funny how that's another similarity they have with colubrids. But it honestly looks as if they just turn into a plastic toy when you touch them. They're not toys though, and they're also not dead either. They likely do this because a majority of the animals that prey on them actively don't eat dead things. It's not like Javan leopards, for instance, are just going to check its pulse to make sure it's secretly not dead. If it looks dead, they're going to assume it's dead and move on to the next thing. Thanks to that little defense mechanism, they get to live another day. Another day to breed, that is. And on the topic of breeding, in the rainier seasons, males and females gather on the surface to copulate every year. Kind of similar to a lot of other fossorial species like purple frogs or Mexican burrowing toad. In the window of October to February, the females soon after lay a small clutch of eggs, typically around 2 to 4, which take up to 2 months to hatch. I should also mention that there is quite a demanding niche for dragon snakes on the reptile market, unfortunately. If you're wondering if people keep them as pets, the answer is yes. If you're wondering if people should keep them as pets, the answer is definitively no, definitely not. They are extremely finicky to take care of. First of all, we don't have an exact way that we know we should be taking care of them because I mean, they are very sensitive to temperature changes, humidity changes, changes in diet, just all sorts of different things that you can't always control, and they, in general, are known to just drop dead. It is exceptionally rare for someone to keep them for longer than a year without them dropping dead, in fact. So, no, don't even think about it. But they are still cool, and you can always look at them just only when they're outside of your house. Aside from that, though, they're doing pretty well these days. Populations look good, and they've even got some scarce distribution throughout Malaysia and Thailand. So here's to genetic diversity and an oddball species that's population is actively growing. Hooray! That'll be all from me. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.